Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable.
Life has a habit of handing you a long list of things to do. Now that could range anywhere between planning a vacation to planning your children's education fund. And let's not forget retirement planning, tax planning, and a whole lot of other planning. So where do you start? How do you manage your money better? Don't worry, that's where we come in. Hello and welcome to NSE FinWiz Season 5 powered by CNBC TV 18. I'm your host Gautam Srinivasan, and today we are at the head office of one of India's largest agri-commodity management companies, the National Bulk Handling Corporation.
Founded in 2003, National Bulk Handling Corporation, or NBHC, has become a leading provider of integrated commodity and collateral management services in India. Recognized for its world-class solutions and trusted risk management practices, NBHC is also known for providing best-in-industry practices when it comes to procurement, handling and storage of agri-commodities. The company also has the widest pan-India warehousing presence with more than 2,000 plus warehouses across 23 states in India. NSE FinWiz, with its theme Dream On, engaged with the employees of NBHC in Mumbai to offer some tips on investment rather than storage of their wealth.
We are very keen to associate with FinWiz so that we can adequately explain and bring out financing options or investing options to our teams for their personal investments.
The inculcation of what and how you create wealth for yourself going forward is very important, simply because wealth management essentially is a systematic, decisive, proactive, well-planned approach to your financial and monetary well-being for the long term. Salary is what you would get on a periodic basis to a specific period of time. Thereafter, it's your wealth management that you created, which will sustain you throughout going forward.
Hello and welcome to NSE FinWiz Season 5 powered by CNBC TV 18. The topic of discussion today is why invest in equities. It's a very important question to address, although it might be common. Now, we have with us a panel of experts to answer that very question. We have FinWiz Aziz and Gajendra Kothari, and of course, the working professionals here at the National Bulk Handling Corporation. We're going to have a very interesting discussion on this topic. So we'll start with you, FinWiz. Why invest in equities, judging by the performance we've had of equities over the past year, the fantastic performance over the past 6 sessions? I guess the markets, both the Nifty and Sensex, have grown close to 2%. Now, the first question here people would have is, have I missed the bus if, say, people have not started investing in equities?
See, if you have read in the newspapers, a new peak, markets at a high every day, because market has been creating, it has created almost about 57 highs in the last year. It has created new highs 57 times out of the 250 times it would have opened. So of course it's overwhelming information of a peak. But it's not the way you should look at it. You should look at it for the last 10 years. What is the returns Nifty has generated, for example? There lies the good news that it has generated only about 8 to 9%. Is that an overwhelmingly large return for a decade per annum? The answer is no. Historically, for 30 years, it has generated 15%. But the last 10 years has just been 7-8%. But if you see this so frequently on the newspapers, you start to believe that the party is over. So please start with it. But having said which, the most important thing is get your principles right. If you have not got your principles right, then you would definitely be disappointed if you don't know how to have the art of managing this animal, which is called equity.
All right. So looking at it from the perspective, following up on what FinWiz had mentioned, there's also the mindset about, whether to invest directly in stocks or invest directly in funds. Earlier, investing directly in stocks was seen as kind of a hobby, that if I have spare time, I'll do some research and invest directly in stock. Is investing in equity mutual funds the new normal, Gajendra, in your opinion?
You need to have interest in buying companies. You need to have a greater amount of interest. After having interest, you need to have knowledge as well. Okay? Without knowledge, you will not go much far. You need to also commit time. You have to understand the balance sheet, their business models, their revenue components. So it takes a lot of time. And to read such 500 balance sheets which are listed, it's going to require full-time profession. So it's best left to mutual fund professionals, which are fund managers, whose only job is to manage your money 24/7.
All right. What would you advise to people who are invested, who want to invest over a longer period of time to attain their financial goals? How do they handle that volatility?
Fortunately, investing has got no gray shades. It's got hardcore mathematics, and mathematics generally doesn't lie or does not produce ambiguous output. So when it is evident that any 10-year investor, okay, in the past, from, for example, 1992, 1993, is when the private sector mutual fund industry was liberalized and you saw the first private sector mutual fund. From that day, every day, if there was a 10-year investor, the worst return in the first few funds is 11% a year. The most unluckiest investor has made 11% a year. Not to say that you can't discover a further unluckier person, but data is overwhelmingly saying that time frame, the time you stay invested, who is the decision maker other than you? There's nobody else. So who will decide whether you can stay for 10 years? It's only you, because you are the signatory. If you could take a call that I can close my eyes and turn a blind eye to this volatility, then last 28 years, 25 years clearly says that the 10-year investor has made 11%, which is the worst. The highest has been 33. Now, large probability that your returns would be in this range. Not to say that it can't exceed or underperform this range, but that's enough comfort, point one. Every time you are wanting some reassurance, whether I'm on the right path, just look at this data, it will give you some reassurance. Point two, if you have large quantums of money invested, which is your hard-earned money, use risk management techniques. One of them, which I'm mentioning, is a leap. And in a forum like this, only curiosity can be created. The entire explanation might not be produced at this stage.
All right. On that note, I think we'll take a short break. But when we return, we'll be discussing more on the finer points of why to invest in equities. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18. Welcome back to NSE FinWiz Season 5, powered by CNBC TV 18. Now, we've been discussing why to invest in equity, so let's take a deep dive on that topic again. Now, diversification is always seen as a safe bet where you have, your short-term funds, your liquid funds, in place for your immediate or safer needs, and then you have your equities for a longer-term horizon. Tell us about portfolio diversification. How does this work?
Diversification and risk mitigation in the form of putting some money aside for the rainy day in deposits and debt is a thing which is very, very important. So in the short run, you have one risk, which is volatility. In the long run, inflation is a risk. The strategy has to strike a balance between these. So it's important that you have a review on a yearly basis with your advisor to make sure that that asset allocation is being reviewed. But 100% one asset is a complacent approach and only a mathematics approach, which is not right. You will have to make sure that you create a balance.
All right. And Gajendra, shifting focus, we have to talk about tax planning. As with any audience, they'll be interested in knowing, how exactly do you navigate this maze of tax planning when it comes to investing in equity funds? Could you give us a few points on, what works and what doesn't?
Tax planning, under Section 80C also you have a variety of options. Because you are employed, you would have EPF anyway deducting from your bank account. Many of you would have been also doing PPF if you have any surplus left. Okay. Personally, I think PPF is a very safe investment. Okay. It gives you 7.6 right now guaranteed return. But my suggestion is that if you are in for a long haul, PPF is a 15-year long product. If you can anyway wait for 15 years, I would suggest go for ELSS, which is Equity Linked Savings Scheme. Equity Linked Savings Scheme over the last 15 years, 20 years, has given much better return compared to PPF. In fact, the average returns have been around 15 to 18%. Equity funds are far more tax efficient because after 1 year, it qualifies as long-term capital gains. Okay, you don't have to pay any tax after 1 year. So if you've invested 1 lakh, after 15 years, if it has become 50 lakhs, entire 50 lakhs is yours, right? It's tax-free. On the other hand, debt funds or fixed deposits, you have to pay 10, 20, 30% tax bracket depending on tax bracket you fall into. Even in debt funds, you have to pay 20% tax after indexation. So equity is a better option compared to debt as far as the tax planning is concerned.
And now another aspect of investing is, the key goal, one of the key goals is of course retirement planning, because at the end of the day, that's the period which you enter where you're not earning and your investments really need to be, saving your life for you in terms of the returns. So could you give us a few pointers on what the audience here needs to do in terms of a basic checklist for retirement planning and how investing in equities can help them in that endeavor? Because usually when it comes to retirement planning, people say, okay, you've invested in equities say till 55, 56, and then now you should start of moving your assets into more safer options.
Retirement has a big advantage of helping you use the most prominent thing in finance called power of compounding. Power of compounding is advantageous to people for long periods of time, and retirement has so much time for you. 1 lakh rupee invested for 10 years at 12% will become 3 lakhs. That's a gain of 2 lakh rupees in the first 10 years. Let's assume I extend my investment for 20 more years and make it a total of 30 years. Okay, the same 1 lakh for 30 years at 12% will leave you with how much money? 30 lakh rupees. So the first 10 years earned you 2 lakhs. The subsequent 20 years earned you how much? 27 lakhs. This phenomena is called power of compounding. So this can only be advantageous if you had 30 years. If you had only 10 years, then power of compounding only gave you 2 lakhs on that 1 lakh. But if you had 20 more years, which retirement will leave you with 20 more years, if you start early, the same 1 lakh in the subsequent 2 decades earned you 27 lakhs as against 2 lakhs. So that's power of compounding. And if you understood this, you retire rich.
So let's get in some members of the audience to list out the goals that they have in mind, which they specified in the cue cards. First name I'd like to call out is Digant Daga.
As a new investor in equity, what should be my approach when I start investing in stocks?
Doing direct equity for a starter is a complete no-no. Why is it a complete no-no? Direct equity is like a 10th class exam. If you have not finished the first grade, second grade, third grade, doing the 10th grade and then saying, oh, I failed the exam, I'm not meant to be qualifying, is not the conclusion to be derived. So point one, very strongly I suggest against it. Why? Because people generally see all their neighbors, their friends make money, and that becomes the motivation to start. And that's when everybody has made money. In good times, making money is relatively easy, but in bad times, you will need a person. So mutual fund is the only vehicle a new investor should use. Point two, so there has to be an advisor who is going to handhold you during the turbulent times to make sure that you live the course. Your goals are long term. Your strategy has to be long term.
All right, Rita Gupta.
My long term goal is to set up a shelter home for stray and abandoned dogs. The time horizon that I see it will take is minimum 15 to 20 years, because that amount that it requires is about, I think, not less than 50 to 75 lakhs.
All right, and on a monthly basis, you can save about 20 to 25, which you would look to increase over a period of time?
Yes, of course. I have given this amount looking to the existing salary that I earn.
Just go to online, many online websites have SIP calculators, wherein if you can put, if you want 75 lakhs at the end of 15 years, they will do a reverse calculation. In 2 minutes, you will know that how much amount you are supposed to save on a monthly basis, right? So if for 75 lakhs, let's say the answer comes 30,000. Today your capacity is, let's say, 15 to 20,000. You should not be disappointed. Start with what you have, 15,000. Okay? There's a beautiful concept in mutual funds called step up SIP. Okay? Just like your salary goes up every year, maybe by 5% or 10%, you can increase your SIP automatically by 5% every year.
It's time for another short break here on NSE FinWiz Season 5, but we'll be right back. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18. Welcome back. You're watching NSE FinWiz Season 5 powered by CNBC TV 18. Why invest in equities? That's the theme of discussion today. And it's time now to open the floor to the audience to ask any questions that they would have to our panelists here on the topic. So let's have a show of hands. Who wants to ask a question to our panelists? All right, we'll start with you, sir.
So my question is, if my savings is 20,000, so how I diversify my savings, like 5,000 investment equities, 5,000 in like mutual funds.
You spent your savings in buying a home.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. And now you want to use your
like,
savings to travel the world.
You have to be very clear when do you want to achieve this goal. You have to give a timeline. Okay, it can't be an open-ended thing. You need to figure out what's the cost today. Okay, and then take inflation. So if the cost of traveling across the world is, let's say, 25 lakhs. I'm just giving a hypothetical number. After 5 years, that number won't be 25 lakhs. It may be 35 lakhs or 40 lakhs depending on the inflation, right? And then the next level is what vehicle to choose. Okay, if it is a 5-10 year goal, go with a balanced fund or a diversified equity fund and just stay there. I'm sure you'll be able to achieve your goal.
All right, let's have a question from the back. All right, the lady there in the yellow outfit.
Right now, I opened my Demat account with some brokering agency, Giarda, which is not well known, but I am investing for a long term. But in case it is get a defaulter, because I am signing that power of attorney with him that he can sell my shares and with my concern only. But in case of default, he can sell my shares, or what he can do with my investments, he can do it.
Demat accounts are not controlled by the broker unless you have transferred whatever is there in your custody in the Demat account into a margin account of the broker. So if you are not doing any complex trades in a market called derivative market, you don't need to sign the power of attorney. So point one, avoid a Demat account if it's mutual fund. If you still have to open one, don't sign a power of attorney unless you're going into derivative segment. If you have not signed a power of attorney, the Demat account, irrespective of whichever be the broker, unknown, known, big, small, doesn't matter. The custodians will generally be two entities called CDSL or NSDL, which are safer custodians at depositories as we call them. So those are the guys who would control your holdings in the Demat account, and you will not have to worry.
All right, let's get another question from this side. Yes, sir, the gentleman in the white shirt.
Whether it is time to manage my fund, where I churn it every time. When I see that it is peak, everyone is speaking about it. For the time, sometime I be cautious, I move everything from equity and move it to the debt fund, till market starts speaking about that the bottom has been formed. So whether a balance between this, because I'm not taking a risk directly going into equity, still I am taking the benefit of the market's ups and downs. And there is a portfolio manager, the mutual fund fund manager, who's helping me because I am going with the fund which is suitable for that condition of the market.
If you keep churning money, it's either your broker or your agent who is going to make more money and not you. I'll give you my own example. For the last 8-9 years, I've been investing my money in a systematic investment planning manner, SIP, okay, into 6-7 funds. And my CAGR has been 22% for the last 8 years. Okay, some of these funds have given as high as 30%. Some of the other funds has given as low as 13%. I have not switched funds. I have not flipped things. I'm looking at the aggregate level. What is my portfolio given, which is 22% tax-free, which is absolutely wonderful. Okay. Now, if you are in for long term, like 5-10 years, okay, by being there, by just enjoying the power of compounding, you'll be able to reach your goals. But the moment you start looking at these WhatsApp messages, forwards, and in the newspapers, press, and what your friend says, the more activity you do in your portfolio, the lesser your returns going to be.
All right, on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of NSE FinWiz Season 5 powered by CNBC TV 18. The theme of discussion has been investing in equities. I'd like to thank our panel of experts for sharing their insights on the topic, and of course the wonderful professionals here who joined us for a very engaging Q&A. And of course, the audience watching at home, we hope you've learned some lessons on money management. Keep watching CNBC TV 18.
In our busy life at corporate, chasing monthly targets and quarterly targets, we really lose focus on personal investments. So in spite of being a finance professional, I think it was great learning here.
Selecting the right kind of investment is what I have learned today. Retirement plan is an amazing thing. plan your goals and accordingly start saving and start investing. Investing is not only about tax saving thing. So that is what I have learned today.
A lot of mental fog has got cleared, especially in terms of investing in equity. I think the panel was pretty sharp, very specific in terms of how you need to invest, what kind of mindset that you need to have, what strategy you need to have. So I think a lot of things have got cleared after attending this session.
Today's session has actually empowered me with a number of avenues for investment opportunities that I can bang on, and also in terms of the direction that it has given to me for making wise investment planning in future.